Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. Viewers, as you know, on October 30th, there was a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping at Korea's Busan. So, what exactly happened in that meeting? Trump, of course, came out of that meeting saying, G2 world and all. Was Xi Jinping? I mean, it seemed that there was some kind of bonhomie, if I can use that word, between the two of them. But what is exactly happening on the ground? Is there some the kind of the tariffs, etc.? What exactly is going on between the two gentlemen? And of course, how does this so-called rapprochement between China and the US affect India? Now, to discuss this, and exactly to tell us what the Chinese are thinking in particular, I have Professor Srikanth Kondapalli in the studio with me. He is professor in Chinese studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University and one of the foremost experts on China in this country. Welcome to this show,
Thank you, Joyita.
Professor Kondapalli. So tell me what exactly happened on October 30th at Korea's Busan.
Well, there were a lot of reports about possible cancellation of President Trump and President Xi Jinping's meeting in Busan till roughly about 48 hours. One doesn't know whether they're going to meet or not because of the different signals that were sent from both sides. The Chinese did not confirm. The American side also prepared several drafts, but they were not very sure whether President Trump would carry on with this visit and the meeting, most important. So there was a series of talks with the officials, Treasury Secretary, Foreign Secretary, and others in terms of cobbling up a deal. So this has happened for the past actually 6 months, but intensity increased in the last few weeks. So there was the talks in London, in Geneva, in Stockholm, in Madrid, and then at the APEC ASEAN meeting in Kuala Lumpur. Since then, there were several drafts which were in circulation, and they just took that decision a few hours before that they would have meeting between the two leaders. This is what we hear in the newspapers, and the American side has become desperate to have a deal, and many Biden administration officials have been arguing that Trump would give up in Busan on many leverages that United States has been able to muster for several years. Those were to be sacrificed. For example, Rush Doshi mentioned about these. Ivan Feigenbaum and others who served with the previous administrations and built up a lot of rapport with both China and India have mentioned that the Busan meeting would be negative for the United States, and Trump is going to sacrifice many of the things that they were able to really muster for over a long period of time, which includes, for example, the ability to control the economic and technological dynamics in China. There are over roughly about 83,000 American companies in China. They have invested more than $700 billion. And they also were actually instrumental in pushing China into the WTO, World Trade Organization, which resulted in China rise. Before joining the WTO, China had just about $200 billion trade. Today, they have $4 trillion of trade overall. That constitutes nearly 40% of their GDP of $19 trillion. So this is all with the contribution of both the Republicans and the Democrats since the Clinton administration. But what has happened is they were able to create stakes in the Chinese society, businesses, chambers of commerce, civil society, because there are over 230,000 Chinese students studying in cutting edge subjects in prestigious universities in the United States. So they were one of the areas of contention before during the first administration of Trump, where they have cancelled visas for thousands of students because of the accusation that they were involved in political activities, including raising the Chinese flag in the American universities and interfering with the administration and admissions in the American universities. So this is one that they have cancelled. But Trump first administration experimented with the tariffs. There was a phase one deal in 2020 whereby the Chinese were supposed to buy some $250 billion worth of goods from the United States, including aircraft, including soybean or citrus, meaning oranges and others. But they have not kept the word in the first phase. In any case, the world went into a downturn with the COVID 19 pandemic and supply chain disruptions. Now they are experimenting with these talks, and then finally they agree to three, four things mainly. First is that United States will reduce the tariffs by about 10%. Previously, they had 57%. Now it comes to about 47%. And secondly, the Chinese would purchase 12 million tons of soybeans this year by December. Uh, and every year 28 million tons of soybean for the next 2 years each. 2027, 2026, 2027, 2028, they will purchase 28 million tons each year. As you know, since early this year, the Chinese stopped purchasing soybeans. Soybean is important because this is the constituency that the MAGA had based on in the United States politics. And the Chinese have actually attacked that base. And this will have a major impact on the elections willy nilly in terms of the upcoming midterm elections in future in the next 1 year. The third aspect is that the Chinese promised to not to exert pressure on the export controls on the rare earth metals. So this is another weakness that the Chinese have been able to catch up with the United States. In the sense that the rare earth metals today, China produces something like 69-70% of the global rare earth metals, and they built up a stock, which means then that the American electronics in defense industry, automobile industry would be affected with the curbs in the rare earth metals. So that created a lot of havoc in the industry in the United States. So this is one of the most important asymmetry that they were able to achieve and exert pressure on the United States, so much so Trump was desperate for a deal. And his window of opportunity to impose tariffs is just about 1 year till the next year midterm elections. Since then, things will get complicated. Domestic politics will get complicated. Already, Mamdani's victory in the New York mayor elections did make some problems for the Republicans. And so the Chinese were able to really catch these weaknesses in the United States.
No, but at the same time, when you're talking about, the tariff thing has come down by only, say, 10%. And China is also conceding a lot in terms of soybean purchase and all. Is China happy with the quote unquote deal that they have got out of Donald Trump? I
Well,
mean, it
China,
seems that China has conceded some space, quite a bit of space, in fact. Who holds the, who has the upper hand in this relationship now?
it looks like China because China was an underdog. And in 2013, they mentioned that their relationship with the United States should be packaged in terms of a new type of major power relations. And since 2013, they have been pushing for parity with the United States. And this is the moment for China in 2025 Busan meeting to scale up their pressure on the United States. So, number one, they have been attempting for more than a decade for this kind of an arrangement. Secondly, the Chinese were buying a lot of soybeans before, and suddenly they stopped buying from the US and started buying from Argentina and Brazil. And so they created a kind of void within the farming community in the United States. And this has been the electoral bloc for the Republicans. And so they were hitting at that base. Uh, so that is a second aspect which we can say that the United States has climbed down and the Chinese were able to push up their power. Uh, Thirdly, most importantly, I think the rare earth metals was a trump card for the Chinese because nothing today, the fourth industrial revolution doesn't move without the rare earth metals. And it is a systemic failure of the United States to study this for decades. In the 90s, 92, 93, California used to produce a lot of rare earth metals. And they shut down because the Chinese were offering at a cheaper rate the final product. By the way, India also exports a lot of rare earth metals to China.
To China.
To China.
Okay.
Refining this is the crux of the matter.
Okay.
The raw material for rare earth metals is supplied by every country. For example, if you have 30, 40,000 tons of iron ore, refined, you get a few grams of rare earth metals, which has to be polished further through chemical processing and all of that. China has mastered this in the last 1.5 decades, while United States, India, other countries have folded up all these because of the cost effectiveness and pollution. It's also highly polluting. So the Chinese were able to bear that cost, both human, financial, environmental, and today were able to exert pressure on the United States because of this. This has become crucial. But what the Chinese did was to apply for every other country, and that means that the global opposition to China has increased substantially. China used to say they are a developing country and they are siding with the global south and others. But this measure a few months ago that they wanted to curb the re exports from the countries that they have supplied rare earth metals. That has really costed China in terms of the international reputation. If you remember, Dr. Jaishankar went to China in June. In his statement, he mentioned that China should not restrict rare earth metals to India because they have a different relationship compared to China and the West in terms of these tariffs and so on. India never imposed any tariffs on China despite huge trade deficits that in favor of China. Um, uh, so so China lost the previous kind of global South related South South kind of cooperation. Even though technically China is not a member in global South, it has been promoting global South, and we see a subtle competition between China and India these days. So the rare earth metals issue between US and China became very problematic. And this is the issue with which the Chinese were beating up the United States with a huge stick. So that was the major theme.
So, what exactly is the mood in the Chinese camp right now? Of course, we know what Trump is talking about. He's talking about a G2 world. There are only two powers in the world: the U.S. and China. What are the Chinese saying about this?
Interestingly, for the comments that President Trump made in the White House press release on the talks, saying that they have achieved a major victory and so on, the Xinhua news agency, which carried the official statement by China, stated that we reached a consensus. They did not mention what is the consensus. Because there is no word about the semiconductors in the whole discussion. If you remember, the Jason Huang of the NVIDIA was under trouble for not selling before the Blackwell AI chips to China. And the Chinese were insistent that these should be part of the US exports to China. Nevertheless, there was the initially the United States restrictions. Today, the Chinese claim that they have developed some AI chips and they no longer needed the NVIDIA chips, which are kind of reduced in their intensity in terms of the AI capabilities. So they are refusing to buy from NVIDIA. And this indicates that actually the Americans are losing many of their leverages in China market. Um, the United States has several leverages. One, it is the one of the biggest markets for every country. Um, um, for example, China-US trade last year were about $660 billion, out of which the Chinese earned $260 billion, which means that if you put from for the past 2 decades, 3 decades since 1990, China earned from the United States $8.5 trillion. That's quite a huge amount. And part of the phase one deal in 2020 was to purchase something from the United States as a part of compensation. But they did not do it. And so the ire of Trump since he got elected this year. So the Chinese were actually pushing forward a consensus related. We do not know exactly what has happened in the Busan meeting in terms of the consensus that the Chinese are speaking about. Whether that includes India, that includes Europe, that includes Japan, Korea, other countries in terms of trade, in terms of geopolitics, in terms of maritime issues, in terms of Quad or other, we do not know. There is no mention in any of the Truth Social bulletins that Trump is dishing out. So the Chinese were also tight-lipped on this. So they just mentioned in their reaction that the consensus has been reached, and we hope that this will be resolved. The problems between U.S. and China, the two largest economies in the world, should be resolved. That was the statement. Of course, Tawei, a famous American specialist in Tsinghua University in Beijing, he mentioned that China had used the rare earth metals option. He mentioned that this is a nuclear weapon that they have used against the United States. And of course, the Biden administration officials they said this is a premature way of utilizing the cards in the U.S.-China trade conflict. So, whatever be the case, the Chinese rare earth metals today are supposed to be freely available, at least till November 10th next year. And
For Trump, I mean, they're going to
for
give
the
it to
United
the
States.
US, huh?
And based on this agreement, India probably can also ask for the under the WTO as part of no discrimination in terms of trade, could ask for the imports. And during the Prime Minister Modi's visit to Tianjin on August 30th and
The SEO summit.
the SUO summit, there was the deal to export to India the rare earth metals.
Yes.
So we do not know whether the Chinese will exert any
Weren't we
pressure.
told that we cannot send any of the stuff that we get from China to the US?
Exactly. So this Busan meeting removes that provision
Okay.
of re-export from other countries. Export-led legislation that China imposed on other countries in terms of what they export to these countries should not be exported to the United States. This provision has been removed in the Busan meeting. So one should expect then the no restrictions on the rare earth metals for other countries as well, including for India. So that is the situation. But the problem is that the Chinese know Trump is fickle. Trump is going to change his position quickly, as he did in the last 6 months, 9 months, since his presidential victory and taking office in January this year. So number one, that they are used to the tit for tats that have happened between the two sides. So China is having Plan B, Plan C in opposing any problems that in addressing some problems that they face with the United States. It is likely that the the deal may not get through in future for the next one year
Beyond one
because
year, or you're saying that the deal might fall through even inside this 1 year?
so the deal is till November 10th next year, 2026. My hunch is that this will not happen even up to that period. So it may break through,
Why not?
break.
Is it just because Trump is so fickle and he can just change his mind? But is he in a position to change his mind?
The problem is that the Chinese would up the ante, would increase the costs on the US, and any geopolitical issue that may erupt on Taiwan Straits, on South China Sea, on Senkaku Islands. This may trigger a drastic response from the United States. So, geopolitical issues, not related to the trade deal, but geopolitical issues. Second, China has also the habit of not abiding by the promises. As I mentioned, the phase one, which has not been implemented by the Chinese despite their agreements. We know that we have so many CBMs agreements with China,
Border agreements.
and they just threw it out of the wind, and the Galwan incident happened. So China likes to have negotiations, very long discussions. So they basically want to test the other side with such discussions, and so one or the other problem will be resulting in a breakdown in the current tactical arrangement. Uh, the other third reason is that this deal doesn't include, at least in the on paper, there is no mention about semiconductors. And while China is upgrading its capacities in chip production from 24 nanometers to that of 3 nanometers, but it is more experimentation and demonstrative, not necessarily massive production of these chips. That requires a lot more infrastructure and the United States blessings for that upgradation. So, so the so it looks like someone or the other will lose their cool, resulting in the climbing down from the deal trade deal. So I mean there is a history to this. This has happened before, so very likely to happen in the future. Second, the United States during this visit by President Trump signed several agreements with Australia, with Japan, with Korea. These are meant for the MAGA movement, shipbuilding, semiconductors, investments from Japan and Australia. There is also the element of rare earth metal supplies from these countries. So, if there is Australia already produces rare earth metals, the Japanese and Australians have signed agreements before, and they supply to Japan of these for over a long period of time. So it is very likely that the United States may shift the rare earth metal dependence towards Australia or towards other countries. There are several agreements with African countries, so this could be one of the areas where, if the US feels that they are less dependent on China, it is very likely that they will go away from the trade deal.
Now, I was asking about the G2 world that Trump is talking about. Is China saying anything about it in particular? Or is it just Trump's assumption that it is actually a G2 world when China actually wants a G1 world?
That's true. The Brzezinski spoke about G2 in mid 2000s, and
Zbigniew Brzezinski, this is a very unpronounceable name.
in terms of spelling, of course, because of
Yes.
his East European origins,
Yeah, he was the NSA, wasn't it?
he was the NSA.
NSA with Bush.
I don't remember, but yeah, yes, that's true. So Brzezinski argued about a G2 where, to stabilize the global order, United States should have a truck with the Chinese. Obama picked up after about 4 or 5 years of this proposition, and in the joint statement with Hu Jintao in 2009, Obama did mention about the G2. At the time, they also included, as a part of the G2, the joint statement mentioned that US and China will look after the South Asian security. And we were riled, and we asked an explanation with the Chinese. Wen Xiaopao told Dr. Manmohan Singh that there was a lot of pressure from the United States to include this word G2 in the joint statement. So they were trying to wriggle out and saying that this is not our baby, but it was the American pressure that resulted in this. But we did see that Chinese were exerting a lot of pressure in South Asia, through Pakistan, through Afghanistan, through other countries. And so the for us, for India, this is a reality. G2 is a reality. Um, so so important to understand is that G2 suggests, from an American perspective, economic aspects, because they already had a G2 in economic sense. What I mean is that, as I was mentioning, so many thousands of American companies shifted. Republicans and Democrats actively promoted this, and by suggesting China has cheap labor, and it subsidizes the Walmart and the middle class of the United States. And so there is several benefits that can be possible with the G2. Their idea was mainly economic, while China's idea is security and global profile. And with the American blessings, China did rise with all these technological, economic, and other profiles. They became largest trading partner for over 130 countries out of 200 countries. And they started using that leverage for political influence across the globe. And that is where the problem for the United States came, because one of the first things is to argue that Taiwan should be integrated with China. And there is the US congressional resolution in 1979 about the president to be advised to look at the balance of power in the Taiwan Straits, and to the rescue of the Taiwanese in the event of an invasion. So that was secondly in South China Sea, and thirdly in Senkaku Islands. President Obama gave it in writing to the Yomiuri Shimbun, saying that if the Japanese fire on the Chinese on the Senkaku Islands, then the alliance will not be invoked. If the Chinese fire on the Japanese, then the alliance may be invoked. So Japan pays billions of dollars to the United States for the troops presence in Okinawa. Some 26,000 troops are present there. The Americans don't allow the Japanese to map the Okinawa, have satellite pictures of Okinawa, their own land. So there are so many restrictions like this. Yet the Japanese were quite resilient on this issue because of their constitutional obligations on the nuclear factor on defense budget not to cross 1.2% and not to go far away 1,000 nautical miles and above. So those restrictions have to be complied with, and hence they need the alliance with the United States. And so the Obama's clarification or suggestion that they may not come to the rescue of Japan actually created a lot of problem. And to the growth of normal Japan, meaning defense upgradation and various other things, including sensitive technologies that they are developing right now, space, AI, and civil nuclear programs. So G2 was a reality, and the Chinese, even though because they wanted to give this picture that they are with the developing countries, they're not with the United States in a G2 format. For global consumption, they want to paint this picture that they are with the developing countries, part of the third world countries. But the actual ground reality is changing fast, and G2 became a reality. They had strategic and economic dialogues, for example, six of them very intensive, in which the successive leaderships in the US have accepted China's position as the second largest economy. They provided a lot of assistance for this, cooperation for this. In S&T, remember the Laurel and Hughes in 97 transferred the satellite guidance systems. Since then, China never had an accident in the space. So much went into the building of Chinese technology. And so the G2 is in place in a way, and China was benefiting.
But China is pretending it's not in place.
Indeed. Officially, they have not mentioned the G2, while Trump had mentioned, Obama had mentioned G2. So this is, in other words, as you mentioned, they were mainly for G1 rather than the G2. G1 here, China rather than United States. The 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017 actually mentioned that they want to occupy the center stage. So they have given nearly 8 years notice to the United States. Yet today, Trump simply walks into the Chinese trap.
Yeah, okay. Now, in this context, I'm just reminded of this fourth plenum they had, China. And there was a lot of rumor about, all these. There was some kind of a purge that was going on. And there was some rumor about how Xi Jinping's position is perhaps not, he was trying to secure his position. Is that the case? Is that really the case? Or is something else going on in China?
You're right that the fourth plenum in October of the 20th Communist Party Congress Central Committee, the this is one compulsion for China also to come to the table to discuss issues with Trump, because you may have seen those visuals when Hu Jintao was dragged outside
That was last year,
in 2020
4 or
October,
23.
in the 2022 October in the 20th Communist Party Congress. So today, Hu Jintao's name is coming up in the press. This is an indicator that to his revival, his image revival. Secondly, Hu Jintao, Wen
In
Xiaopao,
Chinese press, you're talking
in
about?
Chinese, in Xinhua News Agency, in
Okay.
People's Daily,
Mm-hmm.
these cannot come without the party approval.
Right.
And since he was the general secretary before, there is a lot of goodwill for him, especially in terms of the Communist Youth League, another major faction within the Communist Party. Xi Jinping heads the Princeling faction. He also heads the Shanxi province, his hometown province. He also heads the Shanghai Gang. Basically, these are reformers, economic reformers. And also another faction that he's associated with is the New Zhejiang Army. He served in Zhejiang province in 2000s, 2002, 3, and so on. There is a river, Zhejiang, and the other side of the river, there is the Communist Party faction. So it is notionally called as New Zhejiang Army. Not army exactly in the sense of an armed force, but a group of people to which Li Qiang belongs, the current prime minister, premier. Uh, so, so at the fourth plenum, and before the fourth plenum, there was a Peitai He meeting. Peitai He is like Goa for India. So all these Communist Party leaders go to that beach side, they swim, but most important, the informal networks are activated. Party elders like Hu Jintao, like Wen Jiabao, and others who are older, who finished their terms, they retired. They're also called for in the interest of the party that they're invited. In this meeting, it was reported that Chang Yoxia, who is the current first vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, he read out a report stating that Xi Jinping has lost the mandate in terms of the PLA, and also because of the US China tariff wars. This has resulted in the exports decline, the GDP decline. The China's gross domestic product declined from 10% in 2010 to about 5.5% in the last 4 years on an average. These are official figures. We do not know whether
Yeah.
these are correct. The estimates generally by professional scholars suggest 3% growth rate. While the Chinese government says 5%, it is actually 3% growth rate. For every 1% decline in growth rate, there is 8 million jobless in China. So from 10 million to roughly 3% growth rate means 7 percentage growth rates have fallen. 7 into 8 is roughly the figure. And COVID resulted in 80 million jobless because everybody is at home. There are lockdowns that China insisted for longer periods. So this resulted in nearly 80 million jobless, in addition to the economic decline resulting in unemployment. Thirdly,
It's
800,
over 100 million jobless
nearly
people.
100 million jobless. That's very large. China generates 8 to 10 million graduates a year. And if you don't provide at least 8 million jobs a year, then this will result in a lot of social trouble, demonstrations, and
So
others.
this was read out at this particular beach meeting that they had just before the fourth plenum. Was it in October?
This was somewhere in August,
August. Okay.
the Peitaha meeting,
Hmm.
and the fourth plenum was in October.
Hmm.
Generally, the steam gathers in Peitaha and then it is reflected in the fourth plenum meetings. So, plenary meetings. So, in this meeting in October, 9 PLA officers have been removed, including the second vice chairman of the CMC, He Weitung. He Weitung served in Western Theater Command in Chengdu, focusing on India. He also served in the Eastern Theater Command, focusing on Taiwan. So there was the He Weitung is a professional soldier. He joined the army around when he was about 16 years, and through sheer capacity, he rose up the ranks finally to become the vice chairman of the CMC. On the other hand, there is another group, the princelings, whose fathers were revolutionaries or the
Xi
PLA
Jinping
officers,
group.
including Xi Jinping, Zhang Youxia as well. So there is some tension between those who rose up the ranks in the PLA and those who were nominated because their fathers, their parents were in the revolutionary, circle. So so this is the tension in the PLA. So He Weitung removed some officers who are said to be close to Chang Youxia. So Chang Youxia removed He Weitung himself in the Central Military Commission and others like Miao Hua. He Weitung and Miao Hua, they served in Fujian province when Xi Jinping was a party secretary in Fujian province. So some argued that Chang Youxia removed these two people to cut down the base of Xi Jinping.
Okay.
And so that's a trouble in the fourth plenum that Xi Jinping's appointed people were removed since the 18 party Congress, 19 party Congress. So, for example, Chin Kang, the foreign minister, was removed. We do not know where he is now. Nobody saw him since last July 2024. Uh, some argued that he had an extramarital affair and there was a baby boy born to him with a journalist in Phoenix TV in Hong Kong. And but this should not be a reason, but because many political scandals take place in the Chinese political system. If you know that Me Too movement, there is a tennis star who accused one of the Politburo Standing Committee members, Chang Kao Li,
Yes. It was
of
big news at that time.
yeah. So nothing really happened out of that case later on in
She
terms
she
of
disappeared, I think, for some time.
she disappeared and she also gave a different version later on. Uh, so the so the issue is not about the extramarital affair of Chin Kang. It could be much more. But the fact of the matter is that Chin Kang was appointed by Xi Jinping. He was his blue-eyed boy, and he was removed. So this is basically and if you look at all the 9 who were removed from the PLA, these were mostly appointed by Xi Jinping from his inner circle so that indicates that Xi Jinping is losing his base,
I
basically,
mean, there are
in
people
the.
who are brave enough to, or rather audacious enough to ensure that to cut Xi Jinping's wings.
It's all very deliberate. It's all very shadow boxing in the Chinese system. We will never get to know because China doesn't have an Edward Snowden or a Julian Assange.
So basically, what you're saying, it was not Xi Jinping who was doing the purge, but it was, I mean, the others, the factions, the people who have. Is that what you're suggesting then?
Both ways. Xi Jinping himself removed some who belong to Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao faction.
Okay.
For example,
Was that for corruption reasons?
I think it is mainly factional struggles
Okay.
and the insecurities. Uh, Ko Po Xiang, a former vice chairman of the Central Military Commission who's close to Jiang Zemin, was removed. Xu Caiho was removed, another vice chairman of the Central Military Commission. And Hu Jintao's colleagues were also removed from the system, including the person in charge, Mr. Liu, who was instrumental in the high-speed railway development in China. They have about 46,000 kilometer high-speed railway line. And various others, Politburo members. Po Xilai was removed. And Chow Yun Kang, a security in charge in the Politburo. So it is said that he removed 5 million people in the whole of the Communist Party. Communist Party has about 99 million. 5 million people were removed on the anti-corruption drive. Many of these are not exactly corruption related. They may have been, but it is known that most party members are corrupt. If the anti-corruption drive has to be really implemented, you will
90
have
million are
99.
gone.
It is instituted into the party. Corruption is instituted in one form or the other. It pops
So
up.
it's all about consolidating
It's all
power.
about the factional struggles
So Xi
about the
Jinping is
insecurity.
not really in a good place, simple, to put it simply.
One, he's getting older. Second, he made president position permanent, meaning lifetime. And he also introduced a new um, uh, measure that if a central committee member wants to discuss anything in a structured plenary meeting, they should get first permission from the general secretary of the party. Here,
Which
in
is
this
Xi
case, Xi
Jinping.
Jinping.
Okay.
So you cannot even raise a question
You
in
can't even question him without taking his permission.
exactly.
That's a crazy. Now the thing is that you see how in this US China situation, what exactly, how does everything, all this impact India? And also I want to ask you about what is going on in terms of India China relations. Suddenly this kind of rapprochement seems to be happening in also India China relations. So what exactly is going on specifically related to India?
Busan agreement is detrimental to India. Uh, Prior to Busan,
Now, even though it brings in the fact that we can export rare earth, even then it's detrimental.
rare earth metals is actually very marginal,
Okay, then why is it detrimental?
and um, it is detrimental because um, previously, when the tariffs were, there were 137% tariffs on Chinese products, and then reduced to about roughly 55%. From there, in Busan, it was reduced to 47%. So
Which is
when the
also quite high because India's is 50 and
yes,
theirs is 47, which is very high.
exactly, but 3% less than India, which means that if the Chinese are exporting something, they get relatively preferential treatment, but India will be knocked off. Uh, so, so prior to the Busan deal, when the tariffs were 137%, then India had an opportunity in terms of textiles, in terms of agriculture products, in terms of low-end electronics, gold and jewelry, gems and jewelry, uh, also in semiconductor areas, electronics sector and others, textiles. We were able to export 20% increase in Indian exports compared to the post Busan agreement. Pre Busan, we had a number of these. Uh, the Americans were ordering the Indian products because of the high tariffs that they have to bear with the Chinese.
Chinese.
So this was one. But post Busan, we already have cancellation of orders in the last 1 week, 2 weeks. For instance, August, September, there is a sharp decline in the Indian orders to the United States, especially Tamil Nadu-based textile industries and Gujarat-based gems and jewelry, and also in steel products, aluminum, auto parts. In these, there is a reduction in the shipments to the United States. So that's number one. Post Busan, there has been a shift in this. Secondly, it is detrimental to India because G2 has been proposed formally by Trump. And this marginalizes actually not just New Delhi, but also Berlin, London, Paris, Tokyo,
All the world
Seoul,
powers.
yeah, major powers, Canberra, which means that we actually need to explore a multilateral approach with these countries to exert pressure on the United States on the G2 issue. The MEA should be able to cobble up some kind of a coalition with these countries. It is detrimental because one, of course, China US relations are not going to be stable for over a long period of time because they got stuck in the power transition debate. And as a challenger to the dominant power, China is using a lot of techniques, ideas to run down the United States. And US has exposed its weakness in terms of the rare earth metals. Um, Tomorrow it could be another issue, but today it is rare earth metals. So the G2 would be detrimental to India. India needs to actually organize concerted meetings on this. Third, it is detrimental to the um, trade diversification. India needs to further trade diversify with the free trade areas that we sign with UK or going to sign with the EU, with Australia, with Israel, with the UAE and other countries, even with global South countries. There are a lot of complementarities there that we need to explore. Um, it is detrimental. The Busan meeting is detrimental in technological sphere because the as you know, Trump had mentioned to the Apple company not to invest in India. And he also told Google not to invest in India. The Silicon Valley as a whole, he mentioned that Indians should not be given jobs in the Silicon Valley. So that's number one pressure that is getting exerted in the backdrop of the Busan meeting, in the backdrop of the American assistance in the growth of Chinese semiconductor industry and other ICT related matters. So technologically, India will have problems because the ISET that was signed between US and India would be now marginalized, and there wouldn't be much technological traction between US and India in the background of the Busan meeting. We have not seen much in this sphere, and negative comments by President Trump creates an atmosphere, an ecosystem where the investors would not be willing to come into this picture
Well, that's a bad news, definitely.
technologically. Um, Strategically, as we discussed on the G2, this would be a marginalization phenomena for everyone, not just India, but India would also be affected because previously we had US-India relations were improving with China in the background. Even though India was reluctant to be a part of the containment of China in all the discussions that India had with the United States, the US was pushing India to be part of the containment. We were opposing that because that would have a large problem in terms of our ideology, strategic autonomy, our non aligned status, our independent ways of thinking. But also, most important, containment would mean a lot of defense budget. From 82 billion, we probably would have to spend 300-400 billion dollars, which means the social sector will not grow in India, and this is a key problem for us on the containment of China, because our focus is on the social welfare related education, health, or other subjects. Um, Busan will also be detrimental to us in terms of the political issues that we have had. For example, we have the Quad meeting. Quad meeting was to be hosted in New Delhi, but this has been postponed. Now we do not know whether it will be held or not. Quad had two, three things which are very crucial for us. One is the maritime. So we probably will not know the progress of the Malabar naval exercises in future. Second is the critical technologies. Quad was focusing on the 5G, 6G, and also quantum. So we could probably not hear about this if the Quad is not revived. And finally, there is also the climate change and others. In any case, Trump has been very reluctant on several of these multilateral initiatives. So we probably will have to live with this climate related problem, uh, do on our own or with the other like minded countries in Europe or other countries, global south countries. So Busan, if you look at it, is detrimental to India in economic, political, diplomatic, and strategic spheres.
Now, my last question: for how long will this China, India, India, China normalization of relations last?
We do not know. We had a flurry of
And how
visits.
serious is China actually about normalizing relations with India? Is it all about um, keeping India pacified while it takes on the US? And when it feels it's strong enough, it will come after India.
We do not know, but the indicators are China is not serious about normalization. Um, um, Dr. Jaishankar mentioned on June 17, 2020, 2 days after Galwan, that unless until peace and tranquility prevails on the border, we will not have normal bilateral relations, meaning thereby that the 30 strategic dialogues that we have had with the Chinese all got shut down, including strategic dialogue, strategic and economic dialogue, annual defense dialogue, youth exchanges, think tank to think tank, media to media. All these have been there, about 30 of these. Steel dialogue, financial dialogue, about 30 of these. All of these have been shut down. On October 21st last year, we agreed to the disengagement, patrolling, and grazing on the borders. And on 23rd Kazan meeting last year, uh, both the leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, mentioned about the possibility of exploring relations in other spheres. Um, so since October 21st, 2024 till November this year, we have not seen de-escalation. We have not seen de-induction of the troops. So this suggests that China is still uh, putting the border issue as a trump card. There is, if you carefully read Xi Jinping's statement during his interactions with Prime Minister Modi at Tianjin, he mentioned that it can be looked at differently, but to my mind, he was suggesting that in lieu of border stability, China is suggesting to India that Indian market should be opened up to Chinese products. And India has 400 million consumers. And today on the streets, you see the MG cars, you see the BYD in the Indian market, in the Indian roads. While European Union had imposed 100% tariffs on the EVs coming from China, and US also had put 100% tariffs on EVs because the fundamental issue is overcapacity. Uh, China produces a billion tons of steel a year. We produce about 230 million tons. The Chinese produce four times our capacity. And they produce 54% of global cement. They produce 56% of global EVs, electric vehicles. They produce some 76% of solar panels. So what China is doing is dumping these in the other markets and more likely to happen in the Indian market in future. Now, the problem is not about the import of these. The problem is about our trade deficits. Cumulatively, our trade deficits with China were about $1.6 trillion in the last 2 decades.
Yeah, okay.
In other words, in a common man's perspective, India lost $1.6 trillion to China in the last 2 decades. And if you open up the trade for the Chinese overcapacities,
You lose more.
you lose more, probably $10 trillion. It is only that Indian politics should wait for a Trump to launch a tariff war. And that is also likely to happen because the trade deficits over a period of time results in current account deficits. Current account deficits would mean then you spend less on the social sector while the unemployment increases, you are not able to focus on the social sector. So this actually creates a structural problem in the Indian economy. So China contributes indirectly to this problem in future. So, so
It's a
no,
problem. China is a problem. Simple as that, too.
normalization has not happened, but China is seeking a quid pro quo for border stability with opening of the Indian market.
So that they can dump lots of goods.
Basically, dump all this, which means all our SMEs, MSMEs would be drawn.
That's a little scary. Well, viewers, well, India seems to be in quite a tight spot right now, and the US is also not in a happy spot, and it's China all the way. But let's hope, let's see how things pan out in the next 1 year. Thank you, Professor Kondapalli, for coming for this show, and thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.